Hey there, thanks for joining us for Season 2 of The Dominant Ones, where we explore mastery and the pursuit of excellence through being dominant. Joining us today is Guy Kawasaki, a marketing guru and tech evangelist who helped popularize the Macintosh computer through storytelling. If you want to hear what it was like to work with Steve Jobs in the 80s, you're going to want to stick around. Enjoy the show. It is great to have you on. I have so many questions, and the first question I want to ask, just because I'm not going to be able to think of anything else, is I'm not a tech guy. What is an evangelist in terms of the tech world? What is an evangelist if it's not about the Bible?
Okay. So, well, first there was Jesus, and then there was a 2,000-year gap.
Let me write this down. And then there was Guy Kawasaki.
So evangelism comes from a Greek word that means bringing the good news. So a Christian evangelist would bring the good news of eternal life. A business evangelist like me, I brought the good news of Macintosh, that Macintosh would make you more creative or more productive. And today I'm chief evangelist for Canva, which is an online graphics design service. So I'm bringing the good news of Canva, that it can help you become a better communicator by making you into a designer. Now, the difference between evangelism and sales, I would make the case that evangelism is the purest form of sales. Evangelism has the other person's self-interest at heart also, whereas sales is all about your quota, your bonus, your income. Evangelists, theoretically anyway, have the other person's best interest at heart. So when I tell you to use Macintosh or I tell you to use Canva, I'm thinking of you too, not just me.
Fascinating. Okay, so that was my follow-up question. What is the difference between an evangelist and a brand ambassador? And that kind of answers the question, does it?
I think a brand ambassador in most cases is a hired gun, but an evangelist truly does believe.
I agree with you 100%. When anything I get involved in, I have to truly believe in it. And when I went into healthcare, it was something that I truly, truly believed in it. Yeah, you might call me a brand ambassador, but I'm an actual person that helps really put together a structure, a plan, an opportunity for people to help themselves succeed in something that they otherwise wouldn't have had the tutelage or they wouldn't have had the knowledge to do so. All these things that been an effect in my family. And so I lived it. So I know how people live with it and the problems and the troubles that they have. But again, you have to be that person that give up yourself. I always believe that you have to build something bigger than yourself and believe in something bigger than yourself. That's how you make a difference.
Yeah. And, isn't that why we're put on this earth, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
When your first evangelistic calling was with Apple. Is that correct? What was it that drew you to that company in particular? It was pretty early on, 83?
3.
Okay.
So, so the first time I saw a Macintosh, this is, a long time ago, right? So back then, all computers were sort of character driven. You had upper and lowercase A through Z, you had 1 through 9, you had exclamation point, quotation marks, you had a keyboard, right? And Macintosh, when I first saw it, it was, no kidding, a religious experience. It's as if, the scales were removed from my eyes, because using a mouse, you could draw, you could paint, you could, the font that you saw on the screen looked like that when it was printed. So it was a WYSIWYG world. So it was, I swear I started hearing angels sing when I first saw Macintosh. It was a religious experience.
How did you approach then getting that position? And was that something that existed before, or did you say, you walk up to Steve Jobs and say, I'm going to be your Moses? I mean, was there, how did that work?
So the way, honestly, is nepotism. So the way I got into Apple is because my college classmate hired me. And on paper, I did not have the academic or work experience to do the job. So I would say I'm living proof of, a nepotism can work out. Yeah.
And what made you so driven and focus on not just getting in and having something that you believe in and something that you could be very creative with? What made you want to help take that company to the next level? What was your driving force?
Well, at one level, with dollar bill on the line. It was stock options, but that's at one level. But no, seriously, I truly do believe when I saw Macintosh and how easy it was to use and how accessible it made power, I thought, everybody can use this. My parents can use it. Anybody can use it. It's not just for IT department anymore. So that was a very empowering moment. I mean, it was a way to prevent totalitarianism. It was a way to, foster creativity. It may sound a little BS-y now, but I truly did believe that.
Interesting. Fighting totalitarianism with creativity. I love that concept. Was that really something that was like?
Well,
I mean,
like
the first Apple ad.
Right. I was just going to say the 1984 commercial. Yeah. That symbol on the screen that was representing George Orwell, 1984, totalitarianism, thought control, IBM, Big Brother, all that stuff. And the Apple, that woman ran down the center and threw the axe and busted that image. That was a statement that, 1984 won't be like 1984.
Did that come out in 1984? I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, it came out on Super Bowl Sunday, January 24th, 1984.
I might argue that was the single most effective advert in the history of advertising.
I would kind of agree. And, the inside story was that the board of directors hated it because it was so, back then when you ran, well, first of all, hardly any TV commercials were for computers, but if you ran one for computers, it was about speeds and feeds and price points and all this kind of stuff. Nobody showed a woman running down the middle of a bunch of skinheads and throwing an axe at a screen. I mean, that's a computer. I mean, that's a computer commercial. Unheard of. So the board of directors hated it, but they hated it too late, and the media buy was already made. So it was either run the ad or eat the time.
I remember those times when Apple first came out. In the 80s. I was just getting started in the NBA, early 82 to be exact, and Apple became a household name very, very fast. What do you think that brought about their dominance that early on, that it became that household name, like mainly overnight, basically overnight?
Well, I think there's a bunch of factors. So first of all, it's a good name, right? You don't have to struggle to, if it was like convergent technology or, I don't know, some kind of asynchronous something. Apple, duh. I mean, you hear it once, okay, it's Apple, right? So that's number one. Also, whenever there were trade shows or anything, the exhibitor listings are always alphabetic. So guess what? Apple appeared before, Xilinx. And then I think that the computer, Apple II, it just kind of captivated people. It was a great story of two people in a garage, and they asked a very simple question, why do I have to attend Stanford? Why do I have to work for NASA? Why do I have to work for the government? Why do I have to work for a large company? Computers should be smaller and cheaper and easy to use. So it was a story of empowerment and personal efficacy. And all of this rang true with, I think, the American sentiment. So, and it was just, I mean, it's hard to put all that kind of thing together, right place, right time. A lot of things fell into place.
You talk about that story, and a number of the interviews that we've been having on Dominant Ones, things come down to story. And yes. It's as someone said much more eloquently than I'm about to, it's fundamental to human nature to want to communicate stories to each other.
Yes.
From sitting around a fire to sitting around the Zoom situation we have these days. But I remember I was in junior high and my dad came home and was driving me to school, and he was telling me he was about to get into the stock market for the first time. And he was like, I have this company that's my broker just told me about, these two guys who started making computers for the home computers, if you will.
Yeah.
called Apple, and they did it in their garage. And he was so excited and intrigued by the story that he bought some. Now, unfortunately, he sold way too soon. But so we're not the rich people we should have been. But I still remember that to this day, that moment of his excitement and something that he had never really even dabbled in before.
Well, I think that you hit on a very important concept for marketing, which is, speeds and feeds and adjectives. Everybody says their product is patent pending, curve jumping, paradigm shifting, enterprise class, scalable, bug free, easy to use, right? I mean, everybody says that. Nobody says I have a piece of shit, and everybody else says I have something great. And so I think stories count. And funny you should mention that. So I have a podcast too called Remarkable People. And one of the next episodes, I've figured out, or at least I think, that vis-a-vis this pandemic, I don't think the hard part is going to be the science, right? It's not going to be figuring out how to make the vaccine, how to, all that kind of medical stuff. I think the hard part of vaccination is going to be convincing people who don't believe in vaccination to get vaccinated, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be stories. It's not going to be statistics that makes it happen.
I know, as big as they became and big as they still are today, what were some of your early setbacks with the company when you say, wow, we're going to have major problems for a while here. Do we want to stay on this road and ride this out?
Yeah. So listen, Steve Jobs was remarkable. I mean, the closest thing to Steve Jobs that there is today is probably Elon Musk. So Steve Jobs had a reality distortion field about him. And if the sky was blue and the sun was shining and he told you it was raining, by golly, you believed it was raining. So he was the most charismatic, visionary, kind of person. Now, that can go off the rails, right? When you have somebody who makes you drink the Kool-Aid. But he was also a visionary, so he was right. And I have never met anybody like him again. And, part of it is just pure leadership. Now, every book, every movie, everything you've seen about Steve Jobs is true. He was very difficult. He was demanding. He was scary. You loved him and hated him at the same time. And to use a basketball analogy, though I don't know if this is, true. So Dominique, you can comment about this. He was kind of like Bobby Knight, right? Like Bobby Knight was just nutcase and people hated him, but I think his players loved him, right? And so I would not trade those days working for Steve Jobs for anything, because he was
where the trade-off is that you became a very successful company, for a very, very long time to this day. So that tough attitude paid off, and I had the same situation in high school. I thought my high school coach hated me, and he stayed on me all the time, still on the whole team. But the trade-off is we were 76-1 in 3 years, so, it worked, so I understand exactly what you're saying.
Well, I think, as I'm 66 years old, and when I look back on my life, the people who made the most impact are the people who were the toughest on me, right? Mm-hmm. Teachers, the teacher who really just hammered me, those are the ones that I learned from, not the ones that I could, bullshit away and, mm-hmm. just buffalo, and they weren't really demanding. So, there's no boss that's more demanding than Steve Jobs. So, I mean, every HR method of positive psychology, kumbaya, let's sit in Birkenstocks and sip white wine and in our beanbag chairs and talk about the future. That was not what it was like. I mean, he ruled by fear. So I was really afraid of getting embarrassed by him. That drove me to great.
So was that how you learned a lot of your values as far as how you run things? And
no,
did he help instill that you did? So did you you went totally the opposite, huh?
Yeah, I'm just mush. Well, I think it's very important because from the outside looking in, I think it's very easy to draw the wrong conclusions from Steve Jobs. So you could look at Steve Jobs and you could say, okay, so he wore jeans, I'll buy jeans. He wore New Balance jogging shoes, I'll buy New Balance jogging shoes. I'll buy a black mock turtleneck like I got. I will I will buy a Mercedes once a year, but I won't license it. I'll trade it away every year. I'll drive in the carpool lane by myself. I'll park in a handicapped slot. I'll rip people in public. I'll do all those kind of stuff, right? So people look at that and say, okay, I'm going to do all that. I'm going to be a Steve Jobs. No, you're not. You're just going to be an asshole. So the hard part is the visionary part. It's to know, what people will come to want. That's the hard part. And then I would make the case that if you can do that part, then people will look past you being an asshole. So the question, but I think many people confuse that being an asshole made you a visionary.
Right.
I think being a visionary made it acceptable for you to be an asshole. There's a huge difference. You know what I'm saying?
It's interesting, isn't it? I remember early on in my career when I would audition and I wasn't landing anything. It was because I was always trying to be something. And it turns out all I needed to do was stop trying to be something and just do the lines in a way that I would do it. And some people might want it, some people might not. But I am now all of a sudden unoriginal because it's not about the trappings. It wasn't about, like you say, the visionary part, the actual brain part is what's difficult and what matters and what created Apple. Everything else was just, he wanted a new Mercedes every year. He liked mock turtlenecks. He liked all that shit. It wasn't that had nothing to do with what made him a visionary. Yeah. And people focus on the wrong things because I think too often we're followers.
Well, and it's much easier to buy jeans and New Balance and black turtlenecks and Mercedes than it is to be a visionary.
Well, sure.
And I think any level of success that you're going to be somewhat of a jerk at times, because that's how you get a lot of times you get people to follow you. And, especially if they see you doing it right and they see you being successful at it, they, like you said, sometimes they accept it, okay, it is where he is who he is, but you know what? He's getting us where we need to be, so we can deal with it. So I've been through that many, many times. And so even the things I do in life now, if nothing's changed much, it's just, we just change professions.
Yeah. But, it starts with being able to walk the talk, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it does. Well, I've met a lot of people who can talk a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
And no results.
All right, you told me to shut up before. I will be quiet. So you've taken, you went from the evangelism to actually creating a hedge fund, if I'm correct, that invested in
venture
tech
capital
companies.
fund.
A venture capital. Sorry.
Capital.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Of all people, I should know this. That invested in tech companies, and then from there you moved into a wide variety of charities that are really fascinating. Micro investing is something that microfinance is something I'm really curious about. I've been hearing a lot about. I'm just curious how you chose the companies that you wanted to invest in. Was there a criteria, or was it something just felt right? And then what was it that brought you into supporting specific causes and charities?
I usually get involved with companies that have stuff that I use and love. And so, my theory about the genesis of successful tech companies is that two guys, two gals, a guy and a gal in a garage or a spare room, they create something that they want to use. And then lo and behold, they're not the only two nutcases in the world that want to use it. And I think that describes Steve and Woz in a garage, that, they created the computer they wanted to use, and lo and behold, lots of people wanted it too. So that's sort of my orientation to investment also. As for causes, I was brought up with the concept of noblesse oblige, which is, I've been very fortunate. So I think I have a moral responsibility to pay back. I really like an even playing field at a meritocracy. And so it just drives me freaking insane that just because you're a woman or brown or black or yellow, well, actually yellow, they got the opposite problem. Let's just say brown, black, woman, LGBTQ, whatever, right? Why is the field not equal for you? And that just drives me insane that the world isn't more of a meritocracy.
So at this point in your life and career, as you continue to do great things and give people opportunities to help themselves, what makes you so dominant and moving forward in your life to keep you focused and keep you on this road where you want to build things for others?
Well, I just feel a moral obligation. I feel that I have to set a good example for my children. I have 4 children, and I want to be on the right side of history.
So I have another question that Nick often asks, if I may, to ask you.
Sure. Go right there.
What is your definition of dominance?
I'm going to use a 2x2 matrix, McKinsey-esque explanation. So,
No idea what that means, but I love it.
Okay. It's coming. It's coming. So first of all, for you listeners, if you ever retain McKinsey, the consulting firm, to learn what I'm about to tell you will cost you $5 million. So you're hearing it here for free. So I want you to imagine a matrix, 2 lines. There's a vertical axis that measures your degree of differentiation and uniqueness. The horizontal axis is the value of what that is, right? So if you are far off to the right and low, it means that you do something valuable, but it's not unique. Well, there you have to compete on price. So a case in point would be Dell. Dell puts the same Windows operating system on the same generic hardware. You can make a lot of money there because you're doing something valuable, but you always have to compete on price because fundamentally everybody does the same thing. If you go to the upper left-hand corner, that's where you are truly unique, but it's not valuable. There, you're just stupid. You're doing something that nobody cares about. The bottom left corner is where it's stupid and crowded because you're doing something that's not valuable, and stupid people like me in Silicon Valley are funding more stupid companies to do the same stupid thing. So that's the worst corner. But I think the dominant corner is the corner where you are doing something unique and valuable. So only you or only your product or only your service can do this. So I think a very good example would be, let's say, the iPod. When the iPod first came out, it was the only way you could get a broad selection of music on a device that had an interface that a mere mortal could operate legally, easily, and inexpensively. So that was a dominant product because it was unique and valuable. So I think being dominant is being unique and valuable.
Well, we appreciate it, but thanks again for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. This was a really interesting conversation. Great stuff, man. And it was a pleasure meeting you. Look forward to talking again sometime soon.
So thank you so much for coming on.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for watching The Dominant Ones. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to know when we release our next episodes. And please let us know in the comments what makes you dominant.